which cannot be turned into an operational strategy. Now, there are 2 or 3 points which come out very clearly from this leak is, number one is the catastrophic failure of the US intelligence service. If the US intelligence service cannot protect its own classified archive, this is precisely the reason why the US is losing in Afghanistan. To say that US and NATO have lost in Afghanistan because of ISI would be barking up the wrong tree, would be a total, absolute, colossal misjudgment, misanalysis, wrong analysis of the situation in Afghanistan. And precisely because of these reasons, precisely because of blaming Pakistan for the internal failures of the Kabul regime, internal corruption and collapse of the Kabul administration, Mr. Karzai is called the mayor of Kabul for the very incompetent and corrupt government and regime that he heads. And if he is constantly blaming Pakistan, if Pakistan had to disrupt Afghanistan, if Pakistan had to attack Americans and NATO, Pakistan didn't have to go to elaborate mechanisms to orchestrate covert operations inside Afghanistan.
Zaid Hamid, I'll just interrupt you there, if I may, because I will come back to that particular point in a short while about the specifics. But I'd like to go to Richard Weiss in Washington again and pick up a point that was made there. These are source reports. They are coming from operatives or paid informers in the field. Now, it is interesting that the Pentagon comment on this information released is that it could take days, if not weeks, to go through this information. Now, one would assume, as it is US-sourced material, military classified material, that the information people would have already been through this documentation as it came through over the years that it has been being received. Would this be the correct assumption, Richard Weiss?
No, how it works is you end up with hundreds of thousands of these kind of reports. And there are various levels, starting with the people in the field and going up the ranks who screen out the material that looks of dubious correctness and is not seen to be accurate. And what this does remind me of anything is the kind of intelligence that was released before the invasion of Iraq by the United States and Britain. It looked like the same kind of report. So-and-so saw a person from Al-Qaeda and a person representing the Iraqi government meeting in Prague, and they looked like they were conspiring over something. And that information was not made it into the intelligence assessment for the same reason. It's just uncorroborated. These people have their own agendas, and you don't want to make policy on that basis. So what they're going to do now is look through the material that's been released, because it's changed in context, and see if it tells, perhaps reveals what a source was, and that person then needs to be protected, or reveals a battlefield weakness that then needs to be corrected. That's what they're going to have to do. But at the time when they got it, most of this material was not worth assessing or passing up.
Well, Shukriya Baraksai in Kabul, to move on to that point that had been brought up in the beginning, the issue that has been highlighted here is the relationship between Afghanistan and Pakistan. And certainly from the Afghanistan side, the government has said that there is nothing in this information that it disagrees with. In other words, that it does believe that there is some form of outside involvement. Your view?
Before coming to your point, I just want to mention a few things. Number one, this is not Kabul regime. I believe, as an Afghan, Hamid Karzai is the elected legitimate president of Afghanistan. And today the security issues, I hope if the President Zardari or Zardari regime can control overall Pakistan, rather than that to sending and making issues from Pakistan back to Afghanistan. The relationship between Pakistan and Afghanistan was not really good between the governments, not between the nations. Between the nations, always there was a strong commitment and lots of similarity and share values. But between the governments, because the government of Pakistan is always leading by their security services and by their force, by their Fauj in Pakistani term. So therefore, their policy will never leave any non-militant government to be implemented and to be exist. And the relation between Afghanistan and Pakistan was have lots of up and down. It was always like a zigzag policy, because once upon a time, even when the President Musharraf was the president of the Pakistan, General Musharraf, Karzai always used the brother word to him. Although we were suffering at that time and nation was blaming the Karzai, why you're using the brother word for you enemy or the enemy of the people of Afghanistan. But the relation always, because we don't have choice to change our border, we have to work together for prosperity, for security, and for having at least peaceful Afghanistan and peaceful being in the region, to living together. But these kind of reports may never damn it, because that was long ago. The government of Afghanistan and the people of Afghanistan, by proper document, which is they share to the international community that our Pakistani friends are not loyal and honest with us, because they believe as long as war goes to be continued in Afghanistan, that long they are receiving a quite white check or blank check from the United States. Since 2001 till 2010, the most profit politically, strategically, and economically, Pakistan got profit from the war back in Afghanistan, exactly like it was during the Mujahideen time. But there's a question between United States relation back with Pakistan. Is United States still want to rely on Pakistan as a good partner, or no, they have to think double about it?
Well, some may argue, if I could just interrupt you there, Shukriya Barakzai, some have argued that the information that has been made public may give ammunition for some in the US to put more pressure to bear on Pakistan to take greater action, particularly in the tribal areas along the border with Afghanistan. What's your view of that particular viewpoint, Zaid Hamid?
You see, one thing that you need to understand is that Pakistan itself is facing a massive insurgency within its own borders. Pakistan army is fighting a high-intensity conflict within mainland Pakistan. And almost 20,000 Pakistanis have died in the last few years from terrorism, suicide bombings. Now, who's doing that? This attack, this war against Pakistan is getting funds, equipment, weapons and explosives, not by ISI, not by Pakistan, but from Afghanistan. And the issue has been raised many times between Pakistan and the United States and the Afghanistan within the strategic dialogue also. And the fact of the matter is that Pakistan does not have the time, the capacity, and the will at this moment to open new battlefronts. Pakistan does not want to fight a war for the Americans inside Afghanistan. Why should Pakistan declare a war on Afghan Taliban, Haqqani and Hikmatyar, when those groups are fighting the Americans to liberate their homeland and not waging a war against Pakistan? But that does not mean Pakistan is supporting these elements. Pakistan is already hands full with the gifts that have come into Pakistan from Afghanistan. And this is what the Pakistani grievance is. Our friends in Kabul would like to explain who is waging this war inside Pakistan. Where are they getting the money and weapons and explosives from? Is ISI doing it? Or some elements in Afghanistan backed by Indian RAW and the Kabul government are backing them up?
Well, let's be very specific, if I may interrupt you, Zaid Hamid. Let's be very specific. One of the reports in the details released has a former ISI head, Hamid Gul, meeting